So I'm thinking about making a third plate that might work with my monotype and my relief block to print all together in different combinations. And one of the challenges I had when I was trying to print the monotype print was maintaining some really small areas of white on the image, and I was trying to wipe it out with a rag without pushing the ink into the other areas, and it seemed like more problematic than it needed to be. So something I think I'm going to try is I've already offset printed my relief block image onto a piece of craft foam, and I was thinking I would mount it eventually on this piece of cardboard that's the same size as my relief block, but I wanted to cut out some areas first with just an X-Acto knife, and this craft foam cuts so easily compared to cutting cardboard, so it's just a pleasure to cut. And so I'm going to be cutting out not the whole chair, but what I want to cut away is areas that I don't want to be able to ink up. So I'd like this plate to be able to be used for inking the color of the deck and inking the color of the background. I could mount it on two different blocks if I wanted to make sure that those colors weren't going to mix here in the middle. That would require an extra block and an extra step of lining things up. So I'm going to see if I can, for now, keep it all on one block. I guess I could later cut them apart and use them as two separate blocks if I needed to, but I don't think it's too hard to keep that line fairly straight. So I also want to cut away, I liked having a little bit of light highlight on the top of the railing, so maybe I'll cut a little sliver of light away there and cut away that sliver of foam right where the top of that second chair is, so that that stays nice and bright white too when I'm surface inking it. And then once it's mounted onto this block with, I'm just going to use Elmer's glue, spread it nice and thinly, mount it on there, and once it's on there, then I'm hoping I can just use this as a monotype block too, that I can just selectively ink and use stencils with, and maybe even using some sheen collé with in combination with my actual relief block. So that's my plan. I'm going to do a little bit of cutting in front of the camera, and then I'll do the rest of the cutting off screen so that we don't take too much time. I want to make sure I've got a nice sharp blade. Let me pause for a minute and trade out the blade on this matte knife, and then I will cut some of these shapes out to kind of show you how I'm going to get started. And then once it's all cut away, we'll go through the steps of mounting it onto the cardboard. It's really similar to mounting the additive cardboard process, but in case you didn't see that video, I will do it here as well. So let me pause for just a minute while I trade out the blade and do a little bit of cutting, and I'll maybe just show you the last bits of the cutting so you understand how that works. Okay, I've already cut away quite a few of the shapes. You can see the thin line at the top of the railing has been cut away. Right now I'm debating on how much of this to cut away. Now I could cut away this whole shape, including these striped lines, because the black is going to be printing over that area. But I'm a little concerned that if I cut away too big of a hole, that's more opportunity for the brayer to drop down into those low areas. So I think I may take a little extra time and leave some of these black lines intact so that they act as a bridge for the brayer to rest on as I'm inking the plate. So I don't need to be super precise. It's okay to make your white space a little bit outside of your black line work. I'm cutting the opening actually a little bit bigger than it. Ooh, now that would have been a mistake. So I almost cut away this part of the deck too. So I'm going to make sure that part stays connected. But I do want to lift out this part all the way through. There we go. And then I think I'll cut right to here. Good. It's lifting out. And then this shape needs to come out. That's a pretty fine line to try to maintain, so I think I'll just let the top two shapes merge together instead of trying to save that little thin black line. I'm overcutting the corners slightly so the pieces lift out a little bit easier. And then right here, I'll just again cut through that thin edge of the arm of the chair. Not sure if I made it all the way around. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, it looks like I cut that edge twice. All right. Now just got to double check to make sure I didn't miss any key parts that I wanted light to hit. I've got the tops of all the arms of the chairs. There's a second arm of the chair that, oh, there's this little tiny piece here that's also part of the arm of the larger chair, the closer chair. Lift that out. And I'll do a little bit of highlight on the top of these posts as well. Didn't quite overcut that one enough. And then these as well. Just a little sliver here. One more here. This one's a little further away, so I'm going to try to cut it as if it's a tinier sliver so it doesn't seem quite as big as the ones close to us. Alright, so one last chance to look. I don't think I'll put a highlight on the bottom edge, but that would be another spot that could be interesting to have a little bit of highlight. Maybe I'll think about that. Yeah, let's just assume it's in the shadow from the sun. Alright, well I think we've got, it might be easier to see it kind of on a light background so we can imagine which parts of the plate are not going to be receiving ink. And then I noticed, even though I printed this offset onto here several days ago, it's still not dry because the foam is really kind of rubbery and it doesn't absorb the ink very well. So after I glue it on, I think I'm going to actually try to clean off the residue of the ink so that it's not picking up if I decide to use some lighter color of ink on here. But for now we're just going to glue it onto this block. So we'll use the Elmer's glue and card it out the same way we did for the when we assembled the cardboard block. So kind of quickly spread it out there and distribute it with a scrap of mat board. I'm not completely removing it, I'm just trying to use light pressure so that it's spread out into a little bit thinner layer of ink. And if you lift up the board, then there's less chance that you're oozing ink down along the sides of your block. Try to get that glue all the way to the edges of your plate so that the edges of your foam stick down really well. Alright, a little bit more glue pulled over to this corner. Didn't have quite enough on it. And checking for coverage. You don't want any really thick areas. And then we'll just line that up as accurately as we can with our block. It should give you a little bit of time to reposition and slide it around if you need to. So if you have any free floating bits that you need to glue down, you have a second to try to make sure that's lined up right. I'm going to put some weight on this as it's drying, but I think I do want to, I'm curious to see if I can clean this off with our regular kind of dish soap concoction here. So some other cleaner might work better, but just going to see if I can kind of wash some of that residue off while we're letting the plate dry. And if there's a little residue of that ink on there, it's not really going to hurt anything, but I do want to make sure that we're not transferring a lot of this black ink to our monotype layers that we might print from this block. So yeah, I think I will let it dry, and then I'll finish up cleaning off as much of that Akua ink as I can so that the plate is able to be inked in any color, including really light, transparent inks, without getting contaminated by this black ink. So, all right. So I want to be careful not to put anything on there that might stick to this glue. So I need a real rigid piece of plastic. I'm going to have to track something down, I guess, but I'm going to look for a firm piece of plastic or stiff wood first, and then put a little bit of weight on there and let it dry overnight before I finish cleaning it off. I'll talk to you later.